Hi, and welcome to the Metamorphosis Podcast. I am your host, Mike Elliott. This is a podcast that is all about self-realization. This is my passion. This is my purpose, is to be having the conversations that help us be more of ourselves, that unapologetic version of ourselves. It's also my mission to seek out all the people who are authentically living their life, like especially these entrepreneurs who are paving this new way, not just creating profits, but doing it from a place of really big impact and from the heart, so that you can be a part of these conversations and benefit, just like I have over these last 8 years. I have found myself and the person that I'm talking to so often say this sentence: "Oh my God, this would be an incredible podcast episode," which is what inspired me. Finally, it took me a really long time to get the message where God was like, "Mike, create the podcast, man. If you're having these conversations, share this with the world, build it, and they will come." So buckle up your seatbelts and let's get into it. I am so excited for today's guest. Her name is Sarah Swain. She is the co-founder of the MYM community, the MYM business community, and the MYM Summit. She is an entrepreneurial badass, in my opinion. She's a coach, she's a mentor, she's a mentee. She, from my lens, is such a humble human being. She is so passionate about creating her own personal freedom and inspiring others to do the same. She really, in a really beautiful, heartfelt, connective way, a non-traditional way, an intuitive way, helps people create streams of income so that they can also experience that freedom she's created for herself. And I'm excited for all of you to get to know her if you haven't met her already. If she makes an impact on you like she did for me, you are going to be a lifetime subscriber. I've only known Sarah since this past summer. A friend of mine, Mark Grove, shot me a text and was like, "Hey man, I'm going to be speaking at this MYM Summit in Kananaskis, British Columbia. You should check it out." And he sent me a link. I click on the link and immediately I got to discover one of Sarah's first gifts, and that is marketing and connecting, not just marketing strategy, but connecting to people's hearts. Everything that she shared in there just landed and resonated so deeply. I was all in. I bought my ticket and went with one of my best friends. And it was one of the most memorable events I've been to till now. And I've gone to Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny. I've been to all kinds of events, Gabby Bernstein events. I love events. And this one just had its own flavor. When I walked in that room of the MYM Summit, I could immediately feel just the level of heart that was in there, the level of vulnerability, of playfulness, of adventure, of expertise. People who have created a lot of wealth, and people who are on their journey to do that. And during this event, I laughed, I cried. It was just such a moving experience. So before we get into the episode, I want to just share a few things here. And it kind of ties in perfectly to the theme of today's podcast. Normally I do this intro at the beginning, and when Sarah and I started talking, it just organically just became a conversation where we were just in it. And I was like, oh, shit, I didn't do the intro. So I'm adding it now to the beginning, and which is kind of perfect because that's a bit of the theme we explore in today's episode, is the unorthodox approach to business and being an entrepreneur. It doesn't all need to make sense. It's, part of the theme we talk about today is the dance between the masculine and the feminine, and how to integrate those two in business and within ourselves. And so this is a bit of that embodiment right now, is surrendering to the process that unraveled and me doing the intro now. Another thing I want to mention is our Starlink went down right before the episode, so I actually had to drive to our neighboring town to the closest cell tower and set up the studio in the truck. So the sound quality in my end is pretty shitty because I could only use my headphones. My Shure mic wouldn't connect to my phone while I was using Zoom. So my mic is going to sound a little funny and Sarah's sounds amazing, so enjoy. And one other thing too, you're going to find that the conversation seems to be starting off in kind of a random place, and trust the wisdom of it. It gets really juicy.
Into this ordeal, we're like, wow, this is serious. I mean, we could just walk back to the house and get warm if we really needed to, but people who were in this position back in the day didn't have a choice but to figure out how to get that fire going. Like, it is quite literally survival. And so we finally got it going. We were able to warm up. My hands were starting to freeze. My toes were getting cold. We're like, wow,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, this is serious stuff. So a lot of respect. I feel you on that. And you know, Rob getting into all that stuff, I think is pretty cool because it just adds another layer of security under your belt. You know, wandering into whatever the heck this world is these days and what it's going to be. Those are some pretty important skills to have.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I feel like you're in a safe climate too in the winter months when if shit goes totally bonkers. Like, I don't think many people are going to venture out here. We've got our survival skills. We got our dehydrated food. We're good.
Yeah, we're good. We'll just hunker down until whatever it is blows over.
Know where the elk are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny. It makes me think of how relatable it is to the entrepreneurial journey. Like, like just surviving out in
Straight up.
nature. It's kind of completely crosses over.
And the parallels that exist with survival in the outdoors, gardening, creating a garden is also something that we have been on a journey of learning and understanding, because just like, oh, I'll just get a gun and go hunting and fill my freezer. It's like, oh, I'll just plant some seeds in the ground and I'll just have a garden. It's like, it's not that easy. It looks so simple when you see it on social media. You're like, wow, look at these beautiful gardens. They have the homesteading accounts and there's all these chickens that don't have a feather missing. Our chickens are we're like, this is something. And to start something from scratch and have it not work the way that your mind wants to believe it's going to unfold, you end up on this series of solving problem after problem and then regrouping, reflecting on what didn't work, and then realizing where you wasted a bunch of time or where you were doing something totally incorrect, or where you completely missed an opportunity to make your life so much easier. Parallels across the board on all of those things.
Oh yeah. Totally. And just the power, what it makes me think about, which I'd love to touch on the episode, is just the power of community and be connected to the right people. Like, there's been so many things, like go out with another hunter and be like, this one little thing of like how to skin the animal or like where to like set yourself up. I'm like, that just saved me. If I was doing that just on my own, that would take me 5 years to realize that.
Yes.
Oh my God.
The same is true for business too. Community is everything, especially the way that I see, call it the new way of doing business.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be centered around, is your network and how much you can both contribute to either the community that you have created or communities that you're a part of, and what that community and network can contribute back to you in return. There's so many people in my business coaching container that are realizing the significance of community and network on their own journeys. This idea of going at it alone and trying to be solely responsible for the person that creates all your content and builds your brand and shares your message and markets and has to figure out how to get in front of the right, people, places, spaces, all the things. It gets so much easier when you're surrounded by people who see what you do, believe in what you do, they're behind you in what you do. the amount of effort and time and energy that need to be spent on getting yourself out there is exponentially smaller. And it just becomes so much easier when you have people cheering for you, when you're, curled up on your couch, eating some chips, watching something on TV with your spouse, and there's other people out there talking about what you do. I mean, that is powerful. And I think
Yeah.
that needs to be on everybody's radar. If networking and intentional connection and relationship building is not on your radar as an entrepreneur, you're simply just going to have to work that much harder. So if that's not a strategy that people have built in to their business in 2024, it needs to be something that people are focusing on.
Oh my God, so much so. It's got chills. It's such a solid and consistent message that I keep getting reflected back from the outside world, which is what steered me towards like the genre of relationship.
Mhm.
That's where my entire life changed.
Yeah.
Was like working on the relational pieces so that I even had the base social skills to be a part of a network or a community of people.
Yeah.
And then like what ripples from that place is it's life changing.
Mhm.
And it's, I see it time and time again, even, these people that are running ads and like, making these monthly incomes of 500,000 to 700,000, $1 million months. And it's like, when you really start to go into it, it's a solid network of people lit up, same mission, really core, meaningful values, and just supporting each other. And then it's
Yeah.
like, then it becomes this, ripple that helps humanity, and it becomes this like financial empire. It creates so much freedom.
Absolutely. And that is the thing that people don't see behind the scenes because they see the ad. They see the flashy graphic or the catchy marketing hooks, and perceptually they think, oh, that's all I need to do in order
Yeah.
to be able to have that type of success. And so they tend to focus, especially newer entrepreneurs tend to think that that's where they need to focus their attention is on, that's what I refer to, the bells and whistles. It's like, don't even worry about that stuff until you have the foundational components of your business in place, which is all of this. It's like, actually, what are you here to do? What's the problem you're helping people solve? Why do they need your help? Who is here to be able to support you in this mission? Are you treating your intentional network building as an income producing activity? Or are you treating it as, I don't have time to have
Yeah.
conversations with people this week because I'm so busy building my business? It's like, we are backwards. That is the old way
Yeah.
of doing things, and hunkering down and grinding by yourself, instead of thinking like, okay, if I set myself a target of intentionally connecting with maybe 1, 2, or 3 new people a week. Well, look at the compound effect of that after a year. If you are, getting into other people's networks or taking the time to respond to people's messages. Social media is another place where people think it's a waste of time because we've been conditioned to believe that social media is nothing but toxicity and it's nothing but a time suck or an energy burner. And that is only true if that's how you're using it.
That's right.
Whereas if you see it as a tool to connect with people, a tool to create with, a tool to be of service with, a tool to help you get your message out there and be of and be of service to the people who are experiencing the problem that your business has a solution to, then that becomes your biggest weapon in your arsenal. And so it's sometimes it just takes a little bit of a flippant paradigm of how we're looking at these things in our business to realize that we're probably putting the wrong stuff on the back burner simply because we're looking at things as time wasters instead of
Yeah.
these are probably some of the most powerful things you could be spending your time on in your business right now.
Oh my God. Totally. Just that it's so palpable, just that shift in consciousness, like the old paradigm of like push all the love and family away because I need to grind and achieve this financial goal. And then it's like, oh, actually there's a way where you can actually have love and money in a way that's so nourishing and actually quite easeful. Not that there's not challenges and obstacles, but there's this compound effect that I've noticed, like watching others in my own journey, where when there's more people involved and the community starts to get more established, it's like it actually just becomes fun. It's like, oh, obstacle, great. How am I going to approach this? Ooh, this
Yeah.
is kind of fun. This is, oh wow, I'm watching this part of myself that's like judging that this isn't perfect or staged in the right way, but it's like, but this is so fun. It's still happening. The movement, get to
Yeah.
connect with another human and
Yeah.
you know
It's already in motion.
yeah.
It's just a matter of what is the experience that we want to have in the forward movement. And I used to absolutely be that person in my early days of building my business, of just locking myself in my home office for 12, 14, 16 hours a day and just pushing it out. And it can work. I don't believe anybody can do that sustainably, though. You may be able
Mm-hmm.
to have these short bursts of super forced action and a hyper level of control over what you're creating, and an attachment or a fixation on the outcome of what you're building. And you might be able to pull something off, but it's not something that's duplicatable. And it's not something that contributes to your ability to continue to build skills and wisdom that come from the problem solving process of things not going the way that you want them to or thought they would. We need to have those experiences as entrepreneurs because that's what makes us masterful at what
Mm-hmm.
we do. So if we try to just cut through all by ourselves, force an outcome, control the process the entire way, we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to expand within our entrepreneurial journey. And from a long-term perspective, you're robbing yourself of being able to be miles and miles and miles ahead, where if you just let go of some of those reins that you're holding onto so tightly, you'll afford yourself the experience to build skills and knowledge and wisdom that we can't otherwise if we're trying to be hyper controlling every step of the way. It just doesn't work. I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived it. I've lived
Mm-hmm.
through it, thankfully, because
Yeah.
that was probably some of the most stressful times in my business is when I had everything in a death clutch in my fist.
uh yeah, like being the sole creator of every
Yeah.
little piece and like it's got to happen this way and you
Yeah.
can't let go of this piece and have that person do it. It's like,
Yeah.
or controlling the team members that come in, it's got
Yeah.
to be this way. I've heard Tony Robbins talk about that too in the beginning of his entrepreneurial journey, where he's just like so much stress, like so much hypervigilance of it's got to be the like from the ego place. It's got to be this way.
Yeah.
It has to be that way, or it's not working. And there's like this way you're describing of getting out of the way and bringing in the people, bringing in the collaborative piece,
Yeah.
letting spirit guide the ship.
Exactly. I mean, controlling our destiny, I think, is an insult to nature itself.
Mm-hmm.
And, realizing that and really understanding what that means from an embodiment standpoint, that is the turning point where things get to be way more enjoyable, way more
Mm-hmm.
fun, way less stressful, because absolutely there are things we can do and levers we can pull that influence our results.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think, and that's the masculine in the business, right? We know that there's buttons we can press that will have a greater likelihood of producing the outcome that we're looking to have. The rest of it, though, needs to be left up to what our path is supposed to naturally unfold as, and our ability to move with those ebbs and flows as they happen, because some of them are quite surprising, things that we don't plan for, whether it's things that we're like, wow, I put that out there and totally thought that was going to take off and it flopped on its face. Can we maneuver in those moments in a way to not let that completely take us out and just look at things very objectively, wondering why that didn't work, and just be really curious about it and get back on the horse and keep going. And on the flip side, you may have something come crashing into your awareness that was not on your freaking 12-month strategy calendar. And you're like, I didn't plan for this idea to come to me right now. Maybe you need to get out of the way for it. And it's coming into your awareness for a reason. And I've had that happen to me a lot over the last 2 years. And I was someone who would rigidly plan my 12 months in advance. That was a corporate me showing up in my entrepreneurship experience, thinking, all right, I got to have Q1 plan, a Q2 plan, and this is what's happening in Q4. Meanwhile, it's like Q4 of the year prior. And that is the old way of doing business, where you have a really rigid plan in place and you lock into that thing and go all in on every single one of those plans and strategies throughout the entire year, regardless of whether or not it feels good, regardless of whether or not it's working. You make it work. And I finally let go of that a couple of years ago and thought, well, I wonder what'll come into my consciousness about what I want to create this year. And I started trusting that process deeply, and everything changed. Everything changed in my business. My results just went absolutely through the roof from a financial standpoint. And my experience as an entrepreneur from a time standpoint completely changed, meaning that, I'm making exponentially more revenue in my business, working considerably less time. And I couldn't have strategically planned that if I tried. And I think that's where the big trust fall comes into play as an entrepreneur, and just, really leaving it up to God and just showing up for whatever shows up in front of you, and then choosing whether or not you're going to take action on it. Last year at this time, so January 2023, I felt like a sloth. I was coming out of, the 2022, which is a wild year for me. I was very active on social media, big voice for a lot of different things. And I came out of that year thinking like, whoa, MYM had been up and running for 6 months, and I had zero clarity on what 2023 had in store for me. And so I didn't plan anything. I planned nothing other than to just continue the momentum that we had with MYM as a membership, and just committed to staying open to whatever else dropped into my radar. So in January of 2023, I didn't even know that we were going to be hosting an event in, 8 or 9 months later. Oh. And so I think that's a testament to just staying open and being willing to receive the messages when they come through, and then choosing whether or not you're going to act on them.
I'm curious to hear because my imagining in that entrepreneurial journey, especially in the beginning, there being these moments of, that inner critic, self-sabotage, the doubt, imposter syndrome. Like what would you say you leaned into the most to make it through those crucibles of, this is where I could give it all up. This is where that voice is so convincing with my journey, my material, from the messaging I grew up in, what culture impresses on so many people through intentional oppression. What my imagining, and first of all, I want to hear if that resonates. Were there moments like that where that could hook in, and then what got you through those moments?
Yeah, there's a couple different things that come to mind. First and foremost, I don't know a single entrepreneur on the planet, and I know thousands and thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs. Not one of those people have been able to evade fear and self-doubt. Those are just part of the process. And for me, number one, the big turning point that I had in corporate, I was in a hotel room in Northern Alberta. I had just been on the road for 12 hours visiting all of these locations in my region. And then I got back to my room and I still had another 6 hours of work ahead of me, because I had to build a presentation for all of my location managers for a workshop that I was providing. And I'm sitting there, just working away. And I had this light bulb moment of, imagine how hard I would work for myself if this is how hard I work for a company, for an owner that I don't even know, that I've never even met, probably don't share values with. And just that stuck with me like glue, that realization of, the fear of entrepreneurship is, am I going to actually be able to pull this off? And knowing that I was actively putting my entire life on hold for the purpose of my career. Imagine what I would be willing to put on the line in order to bring my own dreams to life. And so that really put a solid, undeniable level of belief in me that I absolutely have the work ethic to be able to make something out of nothing, because I was so willing to excel for things that didn't even matter to me other than career accolades. The way in which I approached my dream to walk away from corporate and start something was that there was no plan B. So even when things felt like they may not work, I had a commitment to myself that it didn't matter if it felt like things weren't working. There was only plan A for me, and it was my job to figure that out. And I really did rely on a lengthy career of evidence that no matter what problem was put in front of me in my career, I solved it. That was my job. And so as an entrepreneur, there's nobody else, especially in the early days when you're the solopreneur. It's like there's nobody else right now that I can say, hey, this is this person's fault as to why this is not working. It's like, it's all coming back to me. And what do I need to do in order to figure this out? So it wasn't an option for me to walk away. It just, and I planted that belief in my head before I even started. So much so that when I left my corporate job and I handed in my notice, it was, I think, right after Christmas, December 2017, I packed up all of my corporate clothes. I had thousands of dollars worth of beautiful corporate clothing. I had also, managed retail stores for several years. So I was, Miss Fashionista with all of the clothes and the blouses and the dresses. Like I had a wardrobe, and I put it all in garbage bags. And I dragged it down the sidewalk to my neighbor who worked for an insurance company. I said, here's my sizes. Go find some women in your office building to give these clothes to. Because I was creating that plan A and only plan A scenario in my mind, that if this didn't work, then, and I needed to go beg for my job back, I wouldn't have anything to wear to go beg for my job back. So I was quite literally burning the boats and taking the island, and knowing that I was going to run into inevitable hardship, because I did in my career. I don't know why I would think that I wasn't going to run into obstacles as an entrepreneur. I think that's a little haphazard and reckless to think that you're not going to run into things that are going to require you to really buckle down and figure some shit out. So I knew I was going to be in those situations. But the level of self-trust that I had to have within myself in order to just know, it wasn't just I think I can do it. It's like, no, I know. I had to have that level of belief that I knew no matter what I encountered, no matter how terrified I got, no matter how scarce things became, I would be able to figure it out. I needed to have that level of trust in myself. And I find that that is a big element that's lacking in the entrepreneurial world, because we have bought into the falsehood that our security, it exists outside of ourselves, and that our safety is within someone else giving us a paycheck. And so it's so easy to default to that, especially as a new entrepreneur or as someone who's actively in the workforce right now that is desperately trying to get out. The death clutch of the allure of the safety of a biweekly guaranteed paycheck is what is blocking people from realizing how powerful they are to actually go out on their own and become their own source of safety and security. You want a biweekly paycheck, you can create it.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give yourself a raise, give yourself a raise.
Mm-hmm.
That's our power as entrepreneurs. But it requires such a profound level of work within. If that's not something that comes naturally to you, if you're not someone who is naturally borderline Kevlar level of confident,
Mm-hmm.
then it would be wise, instead of trying to figure out how to hack your way through strategy to build something, to focus your attention, at least on the short term, into figuring out what you need to do to radically increase your level of belief, so that when you come up against these difficulties, which you will, nobody avoids it.
Mm-hmm.
Every year, the calendar year changes. I'm like, I wonder what friggin' nonsense I'm going to have to face this year. And it's a knowing that there's going to be stuff on my path that's probably not going to feel good. There's going to be difficult conversations. There's going to be really hard decisions that I have to make. There's going to have to be probably moments where all of a sudden my beliefs are starting to contradict one another, and I'm going to have to go within and figure out what's going on, and things get confusing. And that's just the way that it works. That's just the journey. And so the sooner we accept that and realize that it is the most powerful thing we can do to serve ourselves, is continue to work on ourselves, continue to build the belief, because every single new level you get to in your business requires a more convicted level of belief within you that you can take it to the next level, because you've never been there before. This is now new territory. Do you believe in yourself enough that you can get to that next mountaintop? That may require a whole other set of inner work that needs your attention. So to me, it's the inside game. It's the inside job.
Yeah.
It is the focus on what is going on in the thought process, because there's no such thing as not being afraid in entrepreneurship. So if we just know that fear is part of the experience, then it comes down to the relationship that we have with it and whether or not it's healthy. Because fear and I just hang out. That's just it's just part of my everyday. There's always that little thought of, what if this isn't going to work? What if this blows up in your face? What if this backfires? What if something goes wrong? What if this? What if that? That voice is never not chirping away inside my brain. It's not that I've mastered the art of completely silencing my inner critic. It's just our ego trying to keep us safe, and we need it for very certain things in our lives. It's never going to go away. But we have to be stronger than it, and we have to be able to discern when it's actually keeping us safe from something that may not be for us, or whether or not it's just trying to keep us safe from how powerful we really are.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, so many chills. And I feel like there's so much truth in that. And it really, there's a couple things that stick out in what you just shared there. And that was, the first piece was when you first started sharing. It was, what I really got from that was your internal process of filtering through, like, as you take the leap into this entrepreneurial game, like being a more authentic version of yourself, like no plan B, fucking boats are burned. I have no clothes to do the role that I just came from. And this internal process of filtering back through the experiences you've already had. And mean, like, I always came up with a solution. I have always figured it out. And that just gives me so many chills. And I feel like that's a really important thing to highlight for so many entrepreneurs that are in the newer stage of the game, or are quite far ahead, but in that old construct of gripping on the systems and the strategies might be working, but there's like an abandonment of soul. There's like exhausted, burnout, feeling alone, really reactive, these entrepreneurs, and no judgment. This is the, where we're coming from, but the entrepreneurs that have so much inner turmoil, like that inner game you're really highlighting and speaking to. Without that inner game, it's like going home and hitting the kids, kicking the dog, like, because it's like, deep down, and I've learned this over time too in my own ways, is if the relational piece is missing to support the inner game, then there's no point. Like how I really see entrepreneurship and what I really have watched even in the short time that I've known you is I feel so much heart and so much community, like so much connection. And what I take from that when I look at my journey is, God, every person has unique material, not victim to, but an opportunity to take responsibility for it. You know, I look at some of my journey and there's aspects of it, like if I didn't have therapists to lean into, if I didn't have coaches to lean into to help me rediscover that self-worth, that unshakable belief in my own gifts and what I'm here to do, it's impossible. And it's such an important piece, I feel like, to be having conversations about, because I think it can be really attractive to watch like these big numbers of like 50K months, 100K months. It's like, yeah, and the new way. And I really just like, oh, so grateful that you've entered my field, because I feel like you're paving this in such a beautiful way. Is, yeah, but connected from heart.
Yes.
This isn't the patriarchal way. This isn't the like burn the villages to get the results and like tear, you know, burn down the forest to extract the minerals and then realize, oh fuck, we needed the trees. Like this is like, okay, like doing this inner work, shaping self, creating the relational skills to have a community to support these big waves and movements, so that what's being created is sustainable for the long haul and is repairing the harm that's happened from the patriarchal way.
Yeah,
like
the both, and we're creating the new thing and we're also healing the old.
Yeah.
At the same time. And that is the thing that you're picking up on is the center of everything that I do is coming from the heart space. And that was the monumental shift of letting go and not, forcing myself into strategies or execution or launches just because something's on my calendar, and really allowing myself to only ever create when my heart says it's go time. And that completely shifted everything for me. And that was an intentional journey that I went on. I always had that edge where people could feel that coming from the work that I did, but it was always kind of buried behind the hyperstructure of everything, where it's like that feminine energy was really masked by the masculine. It was there and it was like, just give me a little bit more room. And the masculine was just like, no, we need to structure everything and we're going to force this thing to happen. So there was always elements of that coming through in the work that I was doing. But you mentioned, the journey to authenticity. That was another big factor for me in things really changing in my entrepreneurial journey, because the first couple of years, I was escaping this world of corporate only to basically recreate another form of corporate experience. Only I was tricking myself because I could work from home on my own schedule. Hashtag laptop lifestyle. Only I'd created like a 60-hour work week for myself, and I was still working with people I didn't like. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, why is there still such a disconnect with the people that I am surrounded by? And, I'm grateful for the carnage of the last few years, because it really afforded me the opportunity to unpack and scrape away a lot of layers that were not genuinely me, and get even closer to the raw root of who I really am at my core, before the world, especially the world of corporate, got a hold of me and molded me into this kind of like parallel version of myself. And so that inner work, stripping that all away, rediscovering who I actually am, and allowing myself to be seen and heard and be willing to be misunderstood by both of those things. Then that basically what happened is the old community that I had created and built up into this, I had uh, courses, workshops, events. I was running a publishing house. I was doing all these different things. And almost overnight, it was like gone because the new version of me started to show up and the resonance completely dropped. And so that was a scary time because it's like, is anyone gonna come back? Or am I just completely out here on my own? What does this look like? But it is in that courage to allow yourself to be you and begin to really let that version of you emerge, even though it's probably going to confuse people, disappoint people, upset people, anger people. That was the biggest one that I was faced with over the last few years. Um, Even if all of those things occur, can you still allow yourself to show up as you? And that's what your heart wants. And so if you have the courage to do that, then the type of people that come back into your space, because there's a resonance, a genuine resonance now that's happening. There's a coherence there from heart to heart, a connection that becomes far stronger than just your peers in your entrepreneurial network. That was the old way of, call it the LinkedIn world of knowing a bunch of people in business. To this new way that we get to do business from our heart space of being genuinely connected to human beings who are very aligned with you in the ways that are critically important to you. And doing work, again, you mentioned coaches, therapists, having people in your space that you can really untangle this stuff with. That's also happening behind the scenes. I've got a therapist. I've got we all know Kevin. He's my doctor. He's my coach. He's my freaking shaman. I mean, I could give him 13,000 titles for what that man supports me in. And I've got business coaches as well. And then I have people in my space who are we mastermind together, person to person. Let's share some ideas. Let's try and stimulate each other and challenge each other. The support there is significant, but that's all to allow us to feel safe in letting go of a lot of stuff, feel safe in showing up as who we are, feel safe in making decisions that our brain is like, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but having the courage and the sense of safety to move on it anyway, because your heart is like, please do this. Like, I really want to spend my time doing this. This would feel really good for you and me both if you just tried this. That's where things completely changed in my business, was surrounding myself by the people I needed to be able to lean on as pillars of strength, while I needed to soften and unravel and unpack a lot of stuff and refine myself and navigate new territory, new people, new ways of doing business. In a lot of different ways, it felt like basically starting all over again. But that opportunity is here for all of us. So if there's people listening that feel like you've been imprisoned by your own business and you feel like you're completely handcuffed to doing things a certain way or doing business with certain people, or feeling like you've got to keep dragging a client along with you on this journey because this is what you've been asked to do. I mean, you get to completely change your mind on all of that and start leaning into the deeper stuff. Find people who can help you weed out the stuff that's going on in your mind that you don't even know. There's a lot of talk about limiting beliefs, and I think the narrative around limiting beliefs on social media is largely incorrect. And the reason why I have that thought process around it is because people think they're aware of their limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't have a dang clue what your limiting belief is until it emerges from your subconscious mind into your conscious awareness, because your limiting belief lives in your subconscious. And so we have no idea what the hell is going on in there and what's pulling the strings to make our conscious self do the things that it does. And that's where support is critical in having people or professional specialists, coaches who can help you extract, data mine what's actually happening in the part of your brain that you have no freaking awareness of. Help them pull it out, get in it into your view and be like, oh shit, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why I keep making the same freaking decision over and over and over again. That's why I keep abandoning myself. That's why I keep
Mhm.
ignoring my heart. That's the whole conversation that's missing in business is that work, because we can force ourselves to hack our mindset. There's a million books I've read on mastering your mindset in some way, shape, or form. But if we're not actually getting into the nitty-gritty of what's actually creating the outcome, the reality that you have before you that you're not even aware of, then the journey to even be able to access our heart space is just longer than it needs to be.
Oh my God. Yeah, that what I really get from that too is having that outside mirror and reflection with the people that are either, I heard in your process with therapists, with Dr. Kevin Preston, like having a support team to be able to mirror and reflect back some of those places that are unconscious. And I feel like that's a really important piece. And I've known this in my trajectory when I'm working with other people. And this is what I feel from your community is in the community that I was a part of at the MYM summit this past summer in Kananaskis. It was just like a room full of courageous humans who are willing to be vulnerable and real and be seen.
Yeah.
And what I get from that is like the willingness to take 100% responsibility for this life. And that really for me ties in what you shared about being an entrepreneur is the old construct is finger pointing and blaming all the mechanisms that are broken or the people that aren't doing it the way that you told them to do it. And that's why things are, or that's why the stats aren't there and the numbers aren't there. But ultimately, and, everyone that I follow now, and this is where I felt like the resonance was between you and I is being an entrepreneur is a journey of self-realization. Everything is a mirror and reflection of like what needs to be looked at and discovered, like what's unconsciously playing out in my system, my material, my dharma, that life is mirroring back to me to pay attention to and be humbled by. Like
Be humbled by.
be humbled by. And I love what you shared too, and I'm glad you spoke to the mindset piece, because I feel like what can happen a lot, especially in a bit of the spiritual community, some of the business is, yeah, just change your mindset. Oh, you're feeling feelings. And, I want to circle back to this dance between the masculine and the feminine that you were speaking to is, I feel like the masculine approach, that old construct is like, well, just fucking shove those feelings down, shut them off, change your mindset, and then they won't slow you down. And it's like, but that's the feminine nature of being human. It's the part that is wise, maybe doesn't make sense yet until you've moved through that emotion, that irremote, that energy in motion. And then on the other side, there's this, insight. God, I'm playing out what my dad did. I'm playing out what I was taught in school. God, I adopted the belief systems of the construct of my corporate culture. And something like just a visual of this experience that I feel like when I tuned into this call we were going to have together, that I feel like, if I could encapsulate an image to what I feel and what it is you're bringing into the world, is I feel like I see this image of the statue of David, and I feel like when we're all born, we're just this large sum of rock. And there becomes this point where it's like, I know somewhere in there's this masterpiece, that statue of David. And I feel like what you're really highlighting is the process, the practical process to chipping away everything that isn't that masterpiece. And like how would that be possible without the network of people that we are part of? And so this is what I really feel is embodied, like the true embodiment. It's not just an idea, it's not just learning mechanisms. Like what I feel just touching into your community is it's weaving the two. It's weaving that masculine and the feminine. It's the courage, that warrior essence to be seen in the parts that are still the clump of rock that need to be chipped away and removed to land into that deeper sense of authenticity, which is a journey, it's a process.
Yeah.
And I feel like that the community there is willing to own that deep in here, there is a gift. There is that statue of David, and I'm a work in process, and I'm going to show you where my clumpy bits are. Please show me. Because there's safety. There's like
Yeah.
safety, there's like collaboration, there's compassion, kindness. And so it circles me back, and I'd love to hear you share a little bit of going from that corporate culture, being this this deliverance of this mission that's been moving through you, that's your authentic expression. What have you learned in this dance between like that masculine energy and the feminine energy, and how do you feel like, and I feel like there's lots that can be extracted from what you've already shared of like how they're woven together, but just anything you want to share around that dance between the masculine, feminine, and just maybe
Yeah.
even the balance of what you've noticed in the people you've worked with, all these entrepreneurs you're connected with. Like, what does that balance even look like? Is it, is there that like one construct to lean into, or have you noticed that there's a balance? It's not gender specific, just anything you
Yeah.
want to share on that.
Oh my God, that's probably been one of my biggest realizations in the last 6 years that I've been on this entrepreneurial journey, because I was masterful at the masculine in corporate to the point where it was harmful to my well-being, because I thrived in the corporate environment from that context, because I could work within framework, I could create new framework. And when you're in big business, framework is critical. I mean, imagine having a big corporation where you have thousands, tens of thousands of employees, and you don't have bulletproof, airtight framework for how things need to get done, policies, SOPs, things that people can refer to make sure that they're on the right track. It would be freaking madness in the world of big business if you didn't have that structure, which is that beautiful masculine energy that's coming in to create that safety in foundational support. That's how I see masculine. Now the problem is when I went into corporate, I'm like, I'm a master at this. I can create policies and procedures and workflows and all these things. And I'm really great at that stuff. But where things really got bent for me was realizing that my body wasn't necessarily doing very well in my entrepreneurial journey. My mood, my emotions, my ability to connect with people, the sense of safety, or lack of safety, I should say, that I had when it came to slowing down or taking time off or letting myself have fun. Those were big red flags that I was probably way too much in my masculine in business. And that was a bit of a trip for me, because that's what propelled my career, was my ability to be that person. That's why I was promoted within 3 to 6 months of every single role I took in my corporate career. They're like, she can execute, she can perform, she can go, move her up. We need her to have a greater impact in the organization. That was I was 31-ish years old when I had been promoted like 12 or 14 times in my career by that point, because of my masculine energy. I can get shit done. Taking action, that's not that's not like a problem for me. That's outside of the comfort zone for a lot of people. For me, it's like, no, that's easy for me. Where I needed to let myself get uncomfortable was in mastering the feminine. And I started that work intentionally. I started working with Andrea Parker. She was one of the speakers at the MYM Summit, really masterful in that, data mining the subconscious stuff that I'm like, oh God, I didn't even realize I was doing that. All of a sudden, bang, I've got these patterns that are in front of me. And I had to uncomfortably find a way to feel safe in taking a step back and actually letting my hands come off the wheel and stop trying to force and drive and all of those things that, we think as business owners we're supposed to be doing in order to produce results. Because that's certainly what worked for me in corporate. So why wouldn't it work for me here? Well, it wasn't working for me because I wasn't happy. I wasn't healthy. I wasn't having any fun. I wasn't letting myself, take time off. Going grocery shopping for me on like a Tuesday morning was like sacrilegious. Like, you don't walk out of the home office. It's a work day. Like, we're in between the hours of 9 to 5. You sit here with your damn laptop, get your stuff. Even if I didn't have anything to do, I'm like, what can I give myself to do for work instead of just letting myself not have work to do? Like, I look back on that period of time and I'm in awe of where my thought process was and how I thought I needed to be showing up. So my journey a couple of years ago started into gaining health in my feminine energy, finding safety and power in my feminine energy. And then as a result of that, realize that that's actually where my mega power is. It's not just in my ability to execute, create framework, create foundation, get shit done. I'm really, really masterful at that. And then over here, this like beautiful wisdom started showing up, this intense level of trust, beautiful level of creativity, way better health in my emotions. All of these things started to like really grow and expand. And that has given me that balance in entrepreneurship. But I had to have the courage to actually let myself go into the energy that I'm not naturally dominant in. And that can be the complete opposite. Especially in the spiritual community, I would say the healer community, the feminine energy is so dominant. This is a generalization, of course, as always, but it's so dominant there that it lacks the masculine in the sense that there's structure and framework and safe foundation that can hold the expansiveness and the creativity and the ebb and flow and the shifting gears of the feminine. So without that masculine structure, the feminine actually can't have the room that it needs to be able to take up all of this space in all of its nonsensicalness, because often it doesn't make any sense, because we get scared to shift into something if we don't have something foundational to make sure that we're safe to be able to do that. And so now that I'm on, I wouldn't say on the other side of the journey, I'm advanced enough in this journey to really be able to wonder how entrepreneurs are actually sustaining their results, their growth, their impact, their own experience without having both of these things coming to the table for them in their experience. And at the summit, so the MYM conference, we've renamed it to the summit, but the one that you attended, that was an experience for me that I also didn't know that I needed. Because here I am, I'm like, this is what everybody needs. This is what we got to do. I'm going to get everybody into this room thinking we're going to talk about marketing and PR and finances and all the stuff you need to build your business. Then I'm like, wham, we're going to hit you with like 2 days of healing, because this is where the work is. This is where the expansion is. So I was busy curating this in my mind, and I didn't realize how badly I needed to have that experience to like catapult me into an even deeper level of exploration of the feminine in business, because I'd made so much progress. I'm like, man, I'm really getting good at this dance between the masculine and feminine. I know when it's time to hunker down and get her done. Like we're working and we're getting stuff done. We're creating pillars, we're creating foundations, we're creating structure, beams, these beautiful big things that hold everything in space and create such a sense of safety. And over here, I'm taking time, I'm playing. I'm like really starting to recognize the wisdom that comes with that feminine energy. I'm like, yeah, we're nailing this. And then that event happened to me just as much as it happened to everybody in that room. And it was almost like a slap, being like, we're going to test you even further now to get into this whole feminine thing. And so that's the journey that I'm on right now, is to continue that work on myself. What else is wanting to be revealed? What else do I need to do to get uncomfortable? Because I did all the stuff for the masculine stuff. I quit my job and I rah my way in the masculine energy. I created a business. And then a couple of years later, I let it go. And I'm like, okay, we're going to slow down and let the feminine take the lead. I'm like, hey, I did that. And I'm like, now what? So we get hit with these experiences that, stop you in your tracks and think, what's wanting to come through now? And that's the gift. You and I were chatting about this just last night, the gift that I've had in being able to take a step back since my event, which was 5 months ago now. That's crazy that it's been that long.
Yeah.
I have the ability to do that because I've got the masculine structure in place for my business to run without me. And that is like the holy shit factor that I'm almost feeling desperate to help other entrepreneurs understand how important this is, to be able to have both, to be able to have structure in place and a business that runs while you can take a step back, do your work, go on deeper healing journeys, be able to take time off. I mean, yesterday I'm like, yeah, Monday, I'm going to start getting back into the swing of things. And then I had a call with Kevin, Dr. Kevin, yesterday morning, 8:30 in the morning, lost about 18 metric tons of tear and snot during that call. And I'm like, I'm just going to go lay down, and be able to just integrate new things that are coming into your awareness and deeper levels of healing. I'm so grateful that I allowed my masculine to lead the way that it did, even though there were elements of it that were not helpful for me. I'm grateful for that because that's what it created, was structure in my business. So that now when it's time for the feminine energies to really take the front seat, I'm not here having to worry or feel like there's a pressure for me to step back into the masculine and keep things going or get things done, because it's already there. And so if we can look at this as the standard, the benchmark, like the baseline for what we need to have in our businesses, can you imagine the entrepreneurial community paving the way into this new world, this new earth of this is just how we operate. This is how we create livelihoods. And then our children grow up witnessing that there's no shortage of abundance. There's no shortage of finances, but we're also not seeing adults lose themselves. And we're not seeing parents be so tied to their job, their work, their business, that they don't have time with their kids. I mean, it's all got to go away. And this is the standard that we have to command for ourselves as entrepreneurs, to be able to just live your life while your business is working for you. And then you have the option to do whatever you want. Is it time to heal? Is it time to go within? Is it time to just stop healing, stop working, and just freaking go outside and snowshoe or something? Is it time to just take a vacation? Is it time for you to intentionally create? You just want to have space where you don't have to worry about all the logistical stuff and technology and stuff not working. And you just want to be able to create without your brain worrying about things. What if every entrepreneur that is, of the conscious community, what if every entrepreneur was able to work that way? Like, think about the freaking impact collectively that we'd be able to have if we set that as the bar for ourselves, that this is the baseline that we're willing to accept in our business experience, so that we can be here to live our lives on our terms, have as much time as we want for the things that matter. This was the thing for me leaving corporate. I'm like, here I am spending my finite commodity of time for something that is infinite, which is money. And my brain's like smoking, trying to make sense of this. And as an entrepreneur, that's still kind of what it looked like for the first couple of years. I was trading my time for money. And I'm like, how do I
Mm-hmm.
get out of this dang cycle? So we could
Mm-hmm.
have a whole other conversation about creating passive income, but that's freedom. You know, when
Mm-hmm.
we look at freedom loving people, we often look at what the government's doing wrong and how they're taking freedom away. But when we really look at ourselves and challenge ourselves, like, are we creating freedom for ourselves though?
Mm-hmm.
We can point fingers all we want at really brutal governments and policies and all sorts of crazy things that are happening in our world right now, but we can't point without also being willing to challenge ourselves in that arena too. Be like, okay, well, if they laid off and just let me do whatever I wanted, am I actually going to hold the responsibility of what that means?
Mm-hmm.
That's where a big invitation is, I think, for a lot of people. That's a big leap.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm appreciating you so much. And one of the, I'd say, the most valuable qualities that I experience in relation to you is just your level of transparency and authenticity and exposing the nitty gritties of being an entrepreneur and in just in the role of leadership. This is what I really have so much respect and appreciation for, of where it's modeled in this way, because something that's been confusing for me, and I've witnessed in so many people I've had conversations with, where people can get stuck and lost, is the unconsciousness around the personal loyalty to the old way
Yeah.
of but it's an unconscious loyalty. Like, it just happened. That's what the school systems create. That's what, industrial revolution created.
Yep.
Being in stressed households where the love was missing, that intimacy was missing, the transparency was missing. Mom, and for so many families, this is, not for everyone, but for so many families, mom and dad didn't cry in front of the kids. They didn't expose what their process was. They didn't lean into support. And this is something, and it gives me chills, just what I cherish and appreciate so much. And this, I can feel like the gift I get from this conversation is like, whoa, this is the embodiment of this new way of entrepreneurship. It's, yeah, what I project onto you is like figuring out the system and you leaning into those masculine qualities to create a construct to financially support you to be the bringer of feminine energy, like yours, yes, and like showing what that looks like for as a collective consciousness. How do we repair? There's repair that's needed on both sides, but how do we integrate the dance between the masculine and feminine?
Yeah.
And something that really stood out in what you're sharing too in your process is, Matt Kahn really speaks to this place of like true spirituality is trusting the pace of the body and how much time it needs to heal and not trying to force it, change it. And so when I'm hearing and witnessing your journey is like, oh my God, yeah, totally. Like following the hits from whatever you want to call it, spirit, God, universe, life, higher self, whatever it is for whoever's listening, taking those hits from like God of like, yeah, fold that construct of the business in the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then, but what does that look like? And then just waiting and listening, that feminine energy, being in that great mystery of, fuck, I feel afraid, unsure, like, am I supported? But then allowing that greater energy of the feminine that I feel like bringing that fierce feminine and that deeper compassion of like, I'm going to hold you. You just got to let go. And I'm
Mhm.
going to hold you. I'm going to bring you the people. I'm going to bring you whatever it is your body's needing to go through this next leg. And what I really love to witness is, and to hear from you and from that conversation last night of like, yeah, and now I have this structure set up where I'm financially supported to soften and let go into this next wave of the physical vessel to do what it needs to do, to receive what it needs to receive from that call with Kevin, getting to emote and move that energy that's been in there, and how honorable it is and how courageous it is to feel those really deep layers, to chip that much more of that rock away, to
Mhm.
let that next wave of brilliance into the world, and how that will inform the team that you have, the team of, the tribe. And like, oh, like, more of that, please.
Mhm. Yeah, more of that, please. And this is I would call it the unsexy stuff that is really not helpful when it comes to marketing as a business coach,
Yeah,
right? Because
totally.
everyone's like, I just need to figure out how to make money and I need to figure out how to start my business. I'm like, well, this is what it's really actually going to look like for you. And they're like, I don't really want to do that.
Yeah, totally.
This is the magic though, and we will continue to see, call it chunks of entrepreneurs that kind of separate off, like big chunk of an iceberg that separates off and continues moving. And it's the ones who are willing to do whatever that is that's uncomfortable, because there are the ones who, and again, more in the spiritual healer community, I'm sure you can attest to witnessing this. There's such a disdain for structure and control
Yeah.
and having to do things a certain way. It feels harmful to the soul, right? And it's like, yes, and acknowledge that, but also challenge yourself. Why does that feel so uncomfortable for you? And be willing to understand what's at the root of that so you can dissolve it, because you need structure. We need structure. Structure can't be mistaken for control or imprisonment. Like, if you think of structure synonymous as a jail cell, then you need to invite yourself to understand what's going on within you or what's happened in your history to create that connection of structure and prison. And that's what I see, right? So we have in certain communities, we have this big pendulum swing into the feminine. And then in other communities, we have this big pendulum swing into the masculine. And what I do is I keep coaches in both spaces, right? Like, if I'm working with someone like Dr. Kevin Preston and I'm working with someone like Dan Martell, like, that's a reminder that I need both of these things in my life. So if we're constantly gravitating to coaches who feel comfortable for us, who are like, oh yeah, they're totally on the same page with how I see business being done, and that's the type of coach you're constantly hiring, I caution you in that.
Yeah.
It's like, where am I feeling a little bit hesitant to go? And I'll tell you, doing timeline work, grid line work, crystalline energy work was like, that is not the conversation that's happening in Dan Martell's coaching community, right? Like, we're talking about sales strategy and here's how you circumvent someone saying no to you on a sales call. It's like, yes, bring both of these into my space, please, because both keep me incredibly humble, right? And they also invite me to step out of my comfort zone, because there's still also opportunities for me to continue to deepen that masculine energy in my business, where I'm like, I need to have someone like Dan Martell or, the Grant Cardones, like that energy where it's like really intense masculine. It's like, there's a time and a place for that in my business. And I don't ever want to forget the necessity of those things in business. And I also don't want to forget the necessity of the most important thing in my business, which is myself, my well-being, my centeredness, my groundedness, how connected I am to myself, how well I know myself, how well I'm actually able, you mentioned earlier, to listen to the pace that my body is asking me to move right now. Corporate me would move to the point where I could barely get my damn pantyhose off of my body at the end of the day. Like, I just have this purple band of where that god awful elastic was around my waistline, because I'd be so inflamed at the end of the day, because I'd be going. And I just walk around, I'd flop into my loose fitting clothes as soon as I got on. And I just have this purple band around my waist where my skin was literally being suffocated and pinched. And I'm like, my body is speaking to me right now. And my career and the rate that I'm running at is really not respecting that at all. And so in entrepreneurship, we have way more of a choice. Whereas if I told my boss in my career, be like, I'm not running at this pace anymore, he'll be like, cool, we're going to demote you into this job and you're going to lose pay. And it's like, oh shit, well, I guess I have to run at this pace if this is the salary I want and the lifestyle I want. You can see where the matrix really sucks you in
Yeah.
something dirty in that world. Whereas in entrepreneurship, we have the choice. And so if we're running ourselves into the ground, we have to admit that we chose that. If we're becoming unwell and our health is compromised, we have to be willing to admit that we chose that. The beautiful part is we can reverse it. We can heal it, we can mend it, we can be really forgiving to ourselves and compassionate with ourselves in that process of unpacking why we felt we needed to operate that way. That's a fear thing, right? Why was I willing to compromise my body in pursuit of this? What am I so scared of? And we have to be willing to challenge ourselves in that. And as entrepreneurs, your ego may not want you to admit that you're scared, and certainly not you may not want your community to know that you're scared. If you're positioned as a leader, whether you signed up for it or not, people may see you as that and you're like, oh God, I can't be seen as being afraid. It's like, I think we need to have more honest conversations, and I think that's the type of leadership we need moving forward, in order to like shift. It's a very big shift we're creating right now in the world of entrepreneurship, but without that type of transparency for, what's actually happening to entrepreneurs. If we're not willing to do this work, we're not willing to find that beautiful marriage between the masculine and feminine, we're just going to kind of continue to perpetuate the old world and continue to keep these systems alive and these expectations alive. These are just old ways of doing things that they might produce you financial results. Is that the only measurement that we're using to define our success and define the impact that we're making? I think there's additional ways that we can be measuring that too. And that all comes down to how well we actually are.
Yeah. And when you speak to that feminine piece and just integrating more of that into this way of business and, getting those numbers. So that's the whole thing. It's ironic. It's almost the more the feminine's integrated, it actually increases profits, is what I've noticed from the
100%
people that
experience.
Yeah, from the people I choose to follow now. I was like, whoa, this is just a whole new mold. And there's something you said there that just really stood out, and it's just around the transparency. And I don't know if this is everyone's experience. Everyone's experience in this, it's been mine as of lately, is this area where you talk about noticing where there might be resistance or hesitance to work with certain coaches or mentors where it doesn't match what's comfortable, familiar. This is, I'm in my newer level of that, of, hired a mentor who's very much that masculine approach, like big numbers, marketing strategies, like learn the language, have setters and closers, and yeah, great. And whoa, what a mirror for me to watch, love, and embrace the meanness that lives inside of me that judged that construct of consciousness. I could see the place where my growth and my evolution to be able to integrate something that would actually, like, the guidance is embrace the system and integrate it through your authentic experience. It's not like verbatim, filter it through my experience and implement it in an authentic way with your flavor, more heart, more feeling, all those things. That tool that's being guided to integrate has been resisted for so many years because of the meanness I wasn't willing to take responsibility for, that judged that.
Yes.
It was like, oh, this is so not the way. Like, oh my God, look at them. This is the patriarch playing out. This is where all the harm happens. This is so disgusting. And it's like, oh, there's that dark feminine.
Yes.
And that's such a beautiful part of consciousness, like that. And I learn this more and more in my intimate partnership, and I'm learning this in business, and how they actually they're completely interchangeable. That dark feminine, there's a wisdom in there. Obviously there's like the way it expresses, there's the way where it's just like burning, burning down villages. Like, that's not the way, for sure. But like, and there's a wisdom that I noticed that does kind of like get a little messy and gets a little ragey. But then if it's held in a really good way, what I notice is like, then the emotion moves. And on the other, for me, this is my process. On the other side of the emotion, like first, like through the filter process, awareness of like, oh, that's my meanness. This has, I'm projecting whatever lives in me on this system, this structure, these people. I've been needing this. I was guided to it. It was a full body fuck yes. And now I'm judging it. Oh, and then feeling the grief of like, oh, this is like my childhood and I'm embodying it. And oh, the grief of feeling it, embodying it, the impact I make on the people that I love, where I haven't owned it, exposed it, talked about it, been held in it, held accountable in it. It's like, oh, I can't even let in that new piece, like without going through that process. And now it's almost laughable now because I'm like, oh my God, I do need this system so much. And wow, thank God I went through that wave of discomfort. And I love what you shared about working with Kevin, working with, what was his name again?
Dan Martell. Yeah.
Dan Martell, right? Like having those two tension points to almost squeeze and merge and birth like the new evolution of Sarah. And I know that place so much. And I wanted to share a bit about it because I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, that can be a sticking point, is the guidance does come in, that intuition, like trusting that there's that intuition that's like, yeah, this, but then getting stuck at the judging it or resisting it, because it's not comfortable. And but seeing that sometimes that's the work, like
that's the invitation.
Yeah, that's the invitation.
Yeah. Judgment is the ultimate invitation. And oh gosh, it's been several years now that I have been consciously on the journey from figuring out where judgment comes from so that I can just simply observe something without attaching a meaning to it or defining it based on the lens that I am looking at it through. I mean, that's some powerful stuff too in entrepreneurship as well, because the less we can be triggered by things, the easier it becomes to let something new in that we may not have otherwise. And kudos to you for recognizing judgment as an invitation to lean into what's actually there for you. Because if you didn't do that, you could have very easily walked away from what sounds like a very powerful mentorship opportunity for you that's only going to add more powerful fuel to the business that you're creating, which will create more income or revenue, and to me, revenue and personal income is time, and time is freedom. Like that's how it all links to me. People think money is freedom, and to me, money is what gives us our time back. That's just the way that our world is set up. And so our job in this world is to figure out how do we get this system, instead of imprisoning us, how do we get it to work for us? And I've got strong views on capitalism. I'm pro-capitalism. I see the dark underbelly of capitalism. I recognize it, I acknowledge it. It's also, though, the freest form of our ability to create and exchange money. And we need that type of freedom to be able to do so. The problem with capitalism, the reason why there's an underbelly is because we weren't taught how to get it to work for us.
That's right.
And there's a reason for that. But I won't bring my tinfoil out in today's conversation. There's a reason for it, though, and it's our job to recognize where we've just really fallen victim to a system that actually is set up for us to succeed. We're just not taught how to be successful within it. So we have to challenge those things. We have to challenge the judgments. We have to challenge the frustration and the anger, the resentment that we may feel towards things, see those things as invitations. Like, where do I need to heal? Where do I need to let myself expand uncomfortably right now? And I think that's what it's not going to be the here's how to leverage AI in your business 101, or here's how to hook people in with your marketing, or here's how to crush your Pinterest account. These aren't the things that are going to propel entrepreneurs forward the way that they once did. I think that tidal wave has ended in the world of the online space. It is going to come down to the entrepreneurs who are willing to lean into these edges and willing to see themselves and willing to go through that expansion process, because it ultimately is the mirror for everything that your reality becomes. So if you want a big reality, there's got to be big work that happens within, and a willingness to go into those places that freaking don't feel good. Like this work, man, every time I think I've come up to this place where I'm like, man, I am so grateful that this giant chunk of work and expansion is behind me. And then I'm walloped by another freaking 2x4. There's something that presents itself to me that either just trips me up horrendously or causes me so much confusion, or blocks me from seeing like beyond tomorrow. And I'm someone who is prides herself on being a big visionary and big thinker. I'm like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing this afternoon, let alone 20 years from now. So this feels very uncomfortable for me. But this growth is happening at an accelerated pace right now. And for those who are willing to respond to the little nudges that were being given to lean into this stuff before they become, someone in one of my calls the other day called it a spiritual spanking. I'm like, yeah,
Totally.
that's what it feels like when we don't listen to ourselves. You mentioned, being able to actually listen to our intuition. It's talking to us all the damn time.
Yeah.
Every moment of the day. And if we continue to cloud ourselves with all this external stuff and noise and distraction and all the fear that they're absolutely weaponizing right now to keep us from being connected to ourselves and to keep us from being able to listen when our inner guidance system is speaking, or when God is speaking, whatever your belief is, something's freaking speaking to us all the time that we have access to 100% of the time. And our job is to figure out how to chip away. I love the statue of David analogy, chip away until we can hear it, until it's clear to us. And then just listen to whatever the hell it says, even when it doesn't make sense. And as entrepreneurs, this is going to be, in my projection, one of the biggest challenges that entrepreneurs are going to be up against in the next couple of years is actually listening to what that inner compass says, because it's going to defy so much of what we think business is and what we're supposed to be doing. But I think that's where our superpower is, and what's going to define successful entrepreneurship in the future.
Which, from my understanding, is a big asset to one of your offerings, the MYM business community. This is a lot of, what's explored. Is that right?
Yeah, MYM is a very unorthodox container. And even when I was advertising for the event, I said, this is not your average business conference. I mean, I warned everybody, this is not your average business conference where we're going to come in and learn about, the latest trends and hacks and, strategies and stuff. Those things are great, and they have their place. And I say this as a business strategist. But people are usually pretty blindsided when they come into my space, and that's not the only conversation that's happening in this space. And there's a lot of permission that's granted, so long as people are doing the work of discerning between fear and actually knowing what their intuition is trying to tell them. Because that's another fine line that people need to understand, is the difference between your fear and your intuition. It's a very, very, very delicate difference when those two voices are talking to you, because fear can be very convincing and disguise itself as your intuition.
Yeah.
And so if you don't know how to really figure out the difference between those two, that can lead you on a lot of loops and upside downs and roller coasters in your entrepreneurial journey, which a lot of which can be avoided if you really just understand what your inner guidance system feels like and sounds like when it speaks. But yeah, the conversations hit different in MYM. We talk about the bullheaded, no nonsense strategy because there's a time and place for that if you're in a position to be able to take that on. And that's what needs to be done for you. But from one member in that space to the next, they could have an experience. It's 180 degrees difference from person to person. And the conversation with that next entrepreneur may be completely different. That is actually not what you need right now. That sounds like it's going to contribute to inflammation and stress and worry and concern and fear. And therefore, what is your next best step in the direction you're heading? And it could be totally different from one entrepreneur to the next. So I definitely don't do cookie cutter strategy. I believe in fundamentals, which create a framework, which is the masculine. The rest is all up to how well we are willing to get to know ourselves and how we're willing to move and trust ourselves within that framework. And like that to me is the place, the divine place that we all want to be in business, is have the structure in place and then have the freedom and the trust to be able to move about within it. When that voice whispers to you to do the thing, even if it doesn't feel like it makes sense, you're okay. You're safe to do it because you've got things in place that can support you in doing so. Yeah, MYM is really all about the courage to really know thyself and be courageous enough to do what is best for you in your business, the way that you want to run it, the way that you want to feel while you're running it, the type of impact you want to make, the type of people you're serving, the type of person you are. That is a different experience for every single business owner in that container. So it doesn't make sense to me to coach on this is how you build a business 101, regardless of who you are. This is how you do it. I don't coach that way at all.
Yeah, which is so the gift. I feel like I'm a walking case study, even just from your summit, is it wasn't like system strategy. It was just like really deep, heartfelt vulnerability. And, you know, I even look at the birthing of Metamorphosis. It's been a podcast that's been wanting to move through me in such a long time. Even though my partner and I have another one called Together, this one just still wanted to come. And it's in the connections that happened. It's the conversations that happened. It's the feelings that I moved at that event that just brought it into, I didn't even have a choice. There's always choice, but my soul was like, oh my God, yeah. Like all the yeses, so easy, everything in place. And, you know, this is why everyone who's listening here, I feel like we could talk forever on this. But I just want to come to a close here is, if anyone's listening to this conversation and has felt moved by this and wants to be a part of a community where there is support, there is reflection, there is that guidance mechanism to, you know, if that unwavering belief in self isn't there yet, like leaning into the community and be guided back to that inner compass of intuition, so that there can be that discernment, like Sarah's talking to, between fear and intuition. So yeah, if that's something that people are really feeling the pull to, why don't you, Sarah, like share how can people find you, connect with you, become a part of this wave in entrepreneurship in the new way, that's not just to put dollars in the bank, and which is a big plus side of it, and also contribute to a new wave of humanity.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share the best way. It's interesting because the event that you're speaking of, which I'm thrilled to hear how catalytic that was for you and what was on the other side of that for you. That was the proverbial birth canal for MYM. And that's exactly what it felt like. You know, I'm like, I think I just gave birth to something. That must be what's happening to me right now. Even though MYM had already been around for well over a year by that point. it made itself known in a whole other realm at that event. And so that was for me, that knowing, that soul hit. It's like, you are not MYM and MYM is not you. You've now officially birthed this thing, and it's its own entity. And so since then I've actually branched off and been working on continuing to figure out what the hell my personal brand is now, which is a very interesting journey that I could go on for days talking about. And then there's the taking the training wheels off of MYM and letting it energetically make its way out there on its own without needing to be completely driven and controlled by me. So there's another level of like letting go and letting this thing do what it needs to do out in the world, and trusting that the resonance is there and it's going to pull the right people into the space who are looking for something like this. So originally, to answer this question, I would have just given you my website, sarahswain.ca, but that thing's obliterated into a million different pieces right now. So we do have monetizeyourmind.ca right now, which houses the MYM business community, the MYM summit, which our 2024 summit will be May 31st to June 2nd in Calgary. And also its newest edition, which is MYM Expanse, which is the clarity that came through as I took space. Again, beauty in the space, because all of a sudden things become very clear, and you're like, oh, okay, now it's clear to me on what I'm supposed to be doing with this next level thing in MYM. So MYM Expanse is really just a kind of for more of the tenured entrepreneurs who are looking more for that balance between the masculine and feminine. That is like a hyper focus of that container. Whereas MYM Business Community is a beautiful place for startup. I wish I had a container like MYM when I first started my business, because if I just had these fundamentals and the understanding of these fundamentals, that regardless of what type of business you are operating, these things will serve and support you for the rest of time. And I hold the ideology of teaching a man to fish instead of catching a man to fish, because I want people in the MYM community to just know what to do. So, you know, if a launch doesn't work, or 3 years from now they want to start a whole other business, they know what to do. They have the tools. They know what structure is needed. They know the foundations that need to be in place in order for them to do whatever it is they want to do. They want to create a coaching business, or they want to start making soap and selling it at markets. It doesn't matter. It's still the same fundamentals, right? And that's the beautiful structure that we're talking about in this conversation. And it's one of those places where if you can master those things, then you're unstoppable in the world of entrepreneurship. The rest is really up to the journey of the self. But from a business standpoint, you get everything you need in that space. So just depends on where a person's at. They're 3 totally different experiences between the event, the community, and MYM Expanse. Really depends on where a person's at and the type of experience they're looking for. But that's where you can find me, monetizeyourmind.ca, MYM Business Community on Instagram, MYM Summit on Instagram, and then my personal profile is I am Sarah Swain.
Which I highly encourage everyone to start following. There's just the golden nuggets that are in the stories and in the posts can be worked with also.
Thank you.
And I will put descriptions of all of those, or I'll put links to all of those in the description below. And oh my God, Sarah, thank you so much. This was so fun.
Thank you. This was a great conversation.
Such a great conversation. I feel a few more in the future.
I'll come back for sure if you'll have me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in and listening to today's episode. Oh, I have so many takeaways myself here that I'm going to be integrating. So thank you, Sarah, for sharing your journey. Thank you for birthing, and, you know, the honor of being in that birthing space while you birthed.
Yeah, you were right there in the canal when it happened.
Yeah, what an honor. What an honor. Yeah, thanks for being who you are. Thanks for doing your work, and inspiring all those other entrepreneurs to do it in this new way, more integrated way.
Here for the new way. This is what it's about now. Thanks for having me.